The Lake Macquarie Emergency Services are now operating out of cramped headquarters near Boolaroo and have long felt the need to expand.
We've needed a headquarters for a long time. They have been working from very small headquarters at near Cockle Creek, and it hasn't worked, and it became very difficult for times like the bushfires in 1994.
The Department of Bushfire Services has now agreed to fund the development of a new operations centre, planned for a 7-hectare site near the old Cocked Hat Quarry. Mayor John Kilpatrick says it wasn't easy finding a suitable site.
But we've now found a site that's near the freeway, very accessible to all places around the municipality or the city, and of course the City of Newcastle as well.
The centre will house a new operations and administration centre and meeting rooms, as well as plenty of vehicle and storage space. The development application goes before Lake Macquarie Council tonight. If approved, construction work is expected to begin in the next couple of months. Emma Siossian, NBN News.
I think we'll only lose a couple, probably possibility of people like Steve Monaghetti, maybe Pat Carroll, though I know Pat is not in the team, so maybe we'll get Pat.
What about defending champ Paula?
A proposal to develop 29 3- and 4-bedroom apartments, most with sweeping harbour views, is being put to council. The new building on the old Rundle site in Hunter Street will feature new construction as well as the revitalisation of the historic buildings. The adjoining warehouses in Scott Street were designed by Newcastle architect Frederick Menkins at the turn of the century.
The proposal is that we are going to restore and refurbish and adapt part of one of the warehouses that are on the site at Rundles, a complete warehouse building, and add to that both car parking and further building structures that incorporate apartments, commercial and retail facilities.
It's hoped this kind of new development will coax the inner city back to life.
We're hopeful that Council can see that with the portions of the building that we're retaining and the new portions of the building that are going ahead, that it'll be an exciting project for Newcastle and further revitalise the inner area of Newcastle and bring people back to the city.
Newcastle University's medical faculty boasts a glowing reputation in the health profession, but students became concerned when they heard of a university review with investigations into a possible restructure of the faculty.
There have been quite a lot of changes. There have been changes in budget. There have been an external review of the faculty, which is part of the university's policy of doing this successively. There have been talk of, which is going to happen, reduction of medical school places.
A meeting was held on campus last night where Dean of the Medical Faculty, Professor John Hamilton, reassured students that the future of the course and their medical degrees are safe.
And everybody who's going to be enrolled in the next 5 and 10 years will have a very secure future and a very secure training.
Newcastle's course format has been so successful that it's been introduced at Sydney University. This sparked concerns that the Newcastle course would be downgraded because of students opting to do their medical degree in Sydney. Professor Hamilton says this is simply not the case.
And we are in the middle of a long-term strategic planning exercise, which will be completed in the middle of the year, in July, when we will decide what the plan of action for the next 10 years is going to be. That's not a crisis activity.
Even in what may be the happiest or saddest of times, there are people ready to exploit others. They target their marks through wedding and funeral announcements, hitting homes while families and friends are gathered elsewhere.
It's just disappointing that people would prey on people when they're out doing these kinds of activities.
The thieves are after cash and easily disposed of electrical and household goods. Bank accounts can be fair game too if thieves happen over credit cards.
It's fairly obvious that people have been keeping their PIN numbers fairly close to their credit cards and other plastic cards, and as a result of that, a number of people have had money taken directly from their accounts.
Many of the robberies follow a similar pattern.
The method they've been committing these offences has been by the use of Stilsons or multi-grips on the front door lock. So if anyone's been the subject of a similar type of robbery, whether it be whilst they're out at a particular function, whether it be by this way of entry, then we'd be very happy to talk to them.
Police have arrested and charged a Ties Hill couple over a number of recent break-ins. Andrew Lobb, NBN News. From what looked like a no-win situation, a council locked in dispute over nearly anything to do with development, comes a windfall of approvals which should set the city up in major building works for the next couple of years.
It's certainly been a lengthy process, but I think for the city it's been a good one.
One of the most controversial was the construction company McCloy's brokering of a deal with Telstra to build its new office block on part of the city centre site. McCloy offered council a more attractive price of $1.5 million for the land after concerns the block was going too cheaply.
Council resolved last night to sell the site to McCloy for $1.5 million. The contracts would be signed by the 31st of this month, and we'd expect work to start as soon as possible.
Elsewhere in the city, the Esplanade Hotel has been granted approval to build 38 apartments as part of its overall motel redevelopment plan. In the West End, there are plans for a multi-level car park alongside the successful Spotlight building, and the old Dairy Farmers Co-op building looks like getting the go-ahead for a car sales showroom. And operators of Sydney's Parklea markets have focused attention on the old Newcastle store building.
There are a number of development proposals being worked up. Now, whether they come to fruition or not, I don't know, but there's certainly an expectation that Newcastle has a very solid future.
Over all the years, the university has worked to shrug off its ivory tower perception within the business community. It's also been growing to become itself one of the biggest businesses in Newcastle. With a staff of 3,000 bigger than the BHP or the RAAF, and with an annual turnover of $185 million, the university has now opened a mailing list for a new publication, Thinking Business. It's a bit like a magazine version of the Financial Review and seeks to network and market the university's brainpower.
We can't pretend that we're not very important for the livelihoods of the people in the region and the local economy.
And when prompted, University Vice-Chancellor Raoul Mortley wasn't past a quick sales pitch.
We'd like the community to continue to endow chairs, as it has done, say, in engineering, perhaps in other areas, and to think about us. We'd like people to think about us when they're drawing up their wills without being too gloomy about the future.
This is what currently greets you when you arrive at Maitland's emergency ward, but as of Monday it'll be this. Don't you feel better already? For patients, the new surroundings are bound to be a health tonic, one that will have cost the state government $30 million by the time all the renovations are complete. While the price tag is no doubt robust, medical staff at the hospital say the design has given value for money. The emphasis is on efficient patient handling.
Much more efficient and streamlined service, and the physical facilities are certainly much improved, and we're confident that the community will really notice a difference when we get across here.
As well as a slick appearance, the new ward also boasts $350,000 worth of equipment.
We're now going to have a centralised monitoring system which will cost in the vicinity of $150,000. We've bought a portable ventilator and portable defibrillators for the staff to use on critically ill patients.
As the finishing touches are still being put on the emergency ward, plans for further refurbishments are already in the pipeline. New birthing suites and a nursery will be the next projects off the ground. Laura Saperstein, NBN News. Known as Johne's disease, the bacteria attacks the lining of the animal's gut, causing severe diarrhoea and slow wasting away. The condition is incurable.
Well, once they get Johne's, there's no treatment for them, so and it's probably a long and painful death, so probably the best thing is to just destroy them.
One of the most worrying things about Johne's is that it has a very long incubation period. This cow could have had the disease from between 2 and 7 years, and yet a farmer would be unable to detect any symptoms. It's also difficult to test for. Signs of the disease won't show up in calves under 2 years old, and test results can take up to 5 months to be returned. Though Johne's has been slowly spreading throughout the state, it's only recently been found in the Hunter area. The few cases discovered near Scone have been isolated with the animals destroyed, but the potential harm to the beef industry if the disease spreads could be serious.
There's been some figures put up of about $5 million that it might cost the industry, but probably some of the biggest costs will be the problems with studs, with sales, and restrictions from moving cattle interstate and overseas.
Health authorities warn farmers not to be alarmed. A severe outbreak isn't forecast in the near future. But farmers are asked to keep an eye out for the telltale signs of diarrhoea and weight loss in their animals. Laura Saperstein, NBN News.
Pedestrians stepped out to the beat of a jazz band as they walked the popular path linking the university campus with Warrabrook Station to celebrate the completion of the final development. The station was opened last year, with 13,000 students using the facility in the first week. Now there's a path between the university and the trains.
It's just really good to see students achieving something rather than being dismissed as sort of obstructionist and things like that, and having a negative impact on society.
Students have complained about the lack of wet weather protection on the path and the 20-minute walk to some parts of the university. However, the path is well lit at night, and there's also a shuttle bus service to ensure students' safety. It's hoped more travellers will use the trains, or drivers could be slugged with pay parking.
It's just a bottleneck out the front of university every morning, and I think as at the beginning of every academic year, the university is exploring the option of a multi-level car park and charging fees for that. Now if that happened, that would kind of be unfortunate for students. As it is, Newcastle is the only city-based campus that doesn't charge for parking on its grounds.
Amanda Bolger, NBN News. It may look like a haze of pollution, but the Curry Landcare Group claims this mist is environmentally friendly. In a desperate bid to fight acid effluent from mines destroying waterways and land, the lime-blowing machine was developed by group members. Over the last few months, the machine has been tested at a dam above an old mine site near Maitland. The motorised blower sprinkles a fine layer of lime across the surface of the dam, and as the particles sink, they neutralise the acid in the water. The lime also seals the bottom of the dam, reducing acid seeping from the mine. According to Mr Maybury, the recovery of the area has been dramatic.
The surrounding areas, because they're not being hit by the acid and having the acid trickling over them, are rejuvenating and becoming much better.
The group hopes to ride on the success of this experiment by introducing the lime blower to other acid-affected waterways.
Well, there are quite a few of these actual, how can I say, old cancers that are left from the mining days. There's one up at Greta that I was called to the other day, and we're hoping to treat any of those and therefore stop the pollution running into our rivers and creeks.
Amanda Bolger, NBN News.
Like most, the Mariners are keen to see a truce in the league tug-of-war. Yesterday, Mark Sargent represented the new club in players' talks in Sydney, where the peace plan was devised. Although hopeful, he, like most, is aware that such a compromise would impact more in Newcastle than anywhere else. The Knights and the Mariners would have to share a market, which is already bleeding from the year-long battle.
There are some points that obviously there's going to be some hard talking on a number of issues, but it's pretty difficult to say at the moment.
The Knights were advised by the ARL not to comment on today's happenings, but it's understood they are opposed to many of the points listed by Super League today. But if a 22-team competition was agreed to, a Mariners-Knights stoush would be a promoter's dream.
Well, I suppose all along that hasn't been part of the equation, and now obviously it is part of the equation, so it'd make for an interesting afternoon anyway.
Harrigan is making good progress after knee surgery 2 weeks ago, but a decision on whether he'll take the field isn't likely to be made until Thursday.
I'm hopeful that he will participate in this game at the weekend. He's optimistic, but it remains to be seen. It's touch and go at this stage.
No such problems for Adam Muir. He's been cleared after also suffering knee problems. Tony Butterfield will partner Glenn Grief in the front row, with Andrew Hodge claiming the second wing spot ahead of Owen Craigie. The rest of the back line is O'Davis, Albert, Ainscoe, Grogan and the Johns brothers. Glanville's at lock, Marquette in the second row, while Grief and Jackson will make their debuts in the ARL Premiership. And while many are playing down the on-field rivalry that's likely when Super League clubs play their ARL counterparts, really has no doubt it will eventuate.
I'm convinced it will be that scenario right the way through, but it'll just be an added interest. It'll be good.
That's if Cronulla do field a full-strength team. which given today's happenings appears remote.
That's up to the directors and the management of the Cronulla Club. They have given an undertaking to the league within their best endeavours to put the best possible team on the paddock.
Publicans admit late at night in the inner city there are problems. Today, Newcastle Police met with liquor industry workers to try and break down the community's fears of going into the CBD late at night. In a controversial step, police are bringing in covert security cameras to catch the troublemakers in the act.
Cameras are to be introduced to be utilised in and around licensed premises.
Police are also trying to stamp out pub crawls to keep groups of drunks out of the city. But it's the gangs in the streets which publicans say are the problem, young boys threatening people and demanding money.
They are congregating, they have alcohol, they're getting it from somewhere. I don't believe they're getting it from the venues. I think they're obviously, someone's buying it for them.
Today's meeting called for the politicians to step in. Police say they are hampered by the law and the publicans believe it must be changed.
Politicians have got to address it and make sure that the police have more power to get these kids off the street so there's not as many assaults.
Bree Jones was found dead in this Caves Beach house in June last year. Police believe she died from a drug overdose. Last month, Paul Crombie was charged with her manslaughter and 2 counts of supplying methadone to the teenager in the 3 months before she died. Since he was arrested in Byron Bay, Crombie, who's a former heroin addict, has been on bail. Today, the prosecution sought to alter his bail conditions, asking that he not be allowed to take away methadone from the chemist he attends. The prosecution is alleging that Bree Jones died from the supply of takeaway methadone. Magistrate Gary Cox said the lives of those in the community were paramount and overrode Mr Crombie's need. He prohibited him from taking away methadone on all days except Saturday, when he can take away the drug for use on Sunday when the chemist is closed. Bree Jones's family was in court to hear the magistrate say that the takeaway methadone program is a real problem in the community. Crombie was set free after his mother lodged a $10,000 surety of bail. He'll reappear in court in May. Jodie McKay, NBN News. A protest march was held today with parents demanding the state government scrap a proposal to transfer sick children under the age of 5 to larger hospitals after 24 hours of them being admitted to their local hospital. Parents in rural areas say it would be simply ridiculous.
Children need to be where all their relatives are, their family and their friends, not in some obscure place where they don't know a soul, where mum and dad may not be able to go.
State Health Minister Dr Andrew Refshaugi had announced the plan earlier this year.
It's time for us to take a stand and show the bureaucratic bullies out there that we're not going to take this. Rural health is terribly important to us and to the whole of Australia, and we are very important people, and so are our children, and we want them to know they're not going to take us for granted any longer.
The community has vowed to fight any forced hospital transfers and say they won't stop until the government backs down.
Residents liken this to a piece of paradise, a 1 hectare block of bushland hidden away in suburban Warners Bay. But that could be about to change.
This is beautiful bushland, and somebody's going to chop all those trees down and put in a development, a housing development.
Lake Macquarie councillors were given a tour of the site off Bayview Road by the owner-developer. The councillors must now decide if the application to build 10 3- and 4-bedroom villas can go ahead. "200 residents have protested against the idea, some of whom have lived adjacent to the bush block for decades.
30 years ago, when people built here, they said that this was never to be built upon. And then somewhere along the line, somewhere in the mid-80s, there's been a zoning rechange, and now it's suddenly residential and you can build upon it.
Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The night's loss could well be Newcastle Rugby League's gain. It predicts fans starved of rugby league will feast on the 5 local clashes this weekend, the first between Cessnock and Central Charlestown tonight. On Saturday, Toronto hosts Waratah Mayfield, Curry starts its title defence against Wests, and the Bay meets Souths under lights at Enna Bay, the only Sunday game between Maitland and Lakes United. It's also the start of the season for the Newcastle Wildfires rugby team. The Novocastrians will play Northern Suburbs in the opening round of the Hahn Cup. The Wildfires will have to adapt to 4-quarter rugby and an unlimited player interchange rule. They'll also have to cope with a near-capacity crowd at the Sydney Football Stadium, with the game a prelude to the New South Wales and ACT Super 12 clash.
I don't think that will worry them at all. I think probably the wide expanses of the ground and plus the new laws that we're playing in this Challenge Cup will have more effect on the players than the actual crowd at the ground.
The Highfields Wolves will start their quest for a 5th straight premiership in the opening game of the NBN Soccer League against Edgeworth tonight. And the Adamstown Rosebuds will be out to retain the lead in the State Soccer League when they host the Central Coast tomorrow. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Complete with elaborate sets, buckets of stage makeup and a healthy dose of TV soap stars, the Rocky Horror Show is a full-bodied assault on the senses. Produced by rock promoter Paul Dainty, Rocky brings with him the cunning of an old hand in the promotion business, striking just the right note with the paying customer. Most have seen the play or film version before, more than once, but they can't get enough of the slick new Rocky. It's sold out around the country. In Newcastle, 20,000 tickets have been snapped up before the first show tonight.
I think everybody knows the script. You get that feeling when people come in and sit down that they know what you're going to say.
Kim Wilson takes to the stage as Prissy Janet, but the Goody Two-Shoes image is short-lived.
She goes from sweet, perky, innocent little thing to Frank's influence sexually liberating her, and they quite liberated towards the end of it.
Aside from the high-energy singing and dancing spectacular, Rocky Horror is undeniably also a skin parade. But it's all quality skin, star attraction Marcus Graham carrying off the corset look very convincingly. Laura Saperstein, NBN News.
After a week of negotiations, the Knights management finally bowed to the inevitable.
We received a letter yesterday saying Cronulla would not be able to field players for the competition on Sunday. We gave them an extension to 5 o'clock today, and as of 5 o'clock today we have not heard from them.
That means you won't be seeing this on Sunday. The Knights left with nobody to play in first grade or reserves. The players must now try to regroup for next week's game, but that is also in doubt as they're drawn to play the Super League-aligned Western Reds. The club will also suffer financially.
Well, if you look at last year, we had an average of 21,500 people to a game. 5,000 of those are season ticket holders, so it will be a substantial loss.
That loss could be as high as $70,000, and the Knights are considering seeking damages from Cronulla or Super League. Cronulla says it has no choice but to forfeit the game, as its 40 graded players have refused to return to the ARL. But there will still be one game here at the Marathon Stadium on Sunday, the under-21s clash between the Knights and the South Queensland Crushers to go ahead. Richard O'Leary, NBN News.
Australia's infamous company moguls such as Alan Bond and Christopher Skase didn't have the problem of ignorance about company law. They probably knew too much for their own good. But for many directors, the several thousand-page company law is a complete mystery. In fact, it isn't uncommon for many board members to not even know they are a director.
Those people tend to be titled committee members, member of a board of management or councillor, for example. And they may belong to organisations such as not-for-profit arts boards, sporting clubs, tennis clubs and so forth.
Since the much publicised abuse of company powers in the late 1980s, the law courts have increased the responsibilities on directors. Ignorance of their duties is no longer a valid excuse, and directors are expected to be far more vigilant about how their company is run.
We've had cases like Mrs. Morley where they claimed that there is no place for a passive or sleeping director, that is someone who says, I didn't know, my husband ran the company. Directors are being expected to know and find out.
In conjunction with the Australian Institute of Company Directors, the University of Newcastle will offer a 10-session course in the laws affecting directors. The seminars begin in April. Laura Saperstein, NBN News.
The proposed transfer of 160 beds from Allendale Hospital to a number of other institutions in the Newcastle area is not being taken lightly by the local residents. More than 200 attended a protest meeting at Curry Workers Club today to voice their concerns and attempt to prevent the changes going ahead.
And it's a sad day that when you lose facilities like that out of a community that's catering specifically for the elderly people.
The changes would also mean a cut of more than 200 jobs at Allendale. At a similar meeting at the hospital grounds about 2 months ago, Dr Tim Smythe of the Hunter Area Health Service assured the protesters the proposed transfer of beds was part of a social justice issue designed to ensure the equal distribution of health services. But hospital staff say Allendale needs to be upgraded, not downgraded. One of the main concerns is how the proposed changes will affect staffing levels. While all staff have been promised jobs within the Hunter Area Health Service, many say they aren't willing to leave the area.
Staff morale at Allendale at the moment is an all-time low. Nobody knows what their future is. They're guaranteed employment with the Hunter Area Health Service. That could be anywhere.
The protesters today gave their unanimous support for another public meeting to be held soon at Cessnock Town Hall. Both the state and federal health ministers, along with Dr Smythe, will be invited to attend. Emma Siossian, NBN News.